good afternoon, good evening, depending on the time you're watching this. It's another fun session of the Humanitarians of Africa series, where I have been sharing the amazing story of impact, the amazing story of growth of many founders across Africa. And today I have all the way from Zambia. I have someone all the way from Zambia. She's here to share her story with us. And guys, you know, this is the first person we're having from Zambia, so we're going to be hearing from a different perspective altogether. So open your minds, open your heart to learn, to see from a different cultural perspective, to see from a different environment how things are done in the nonprofit sector. Yuma, thank you so much for having this conversation with me today. I hope I got your name correctly, the pronunciation of it. Is it?
Yes. Say it again. Say it again.
NYUMA.
Yes. So you're saying it perfectly. So it's NYUMA. In Zambia, it's NYUMA. Here in the United States where I live, it becomes NYUMA because it's just easier for all the different people. So people say, how do you say it correctly? I said, it really just depends on where I am and what's happening, right? As long as I know you're talking to me, it's fine.
I know.
No problem.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for coming here with me to share your story and have fun with me today.
Yes. Well, you know, Ella, I've been looking forward to this conversation.
I've
been texting you and telling you, like, I'm so excited because I just have so many thoughts and there's so many things I want to talk about. And in a platform like this, where it's very casual, but it's supposed to help push the thinking and challenge people's thinking, and but also inform people who are thinking about getting into the sector. So thank you for hosting this platform. It's amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So now, like I said before we started, I don't like to introduce anyone. I like everyone to tell us who they are by themselves so that I don't miss the important things out. So, Yuma, what exactly do you do? Who are you? Let's meet you. Can you introduce yourself?
Okay, yeah. You know, it's hard, Ella, as you start to get old, right? You start to, as you start to get old or older, I should say, right? It becomes hard to really say who you are, because who you are as time goes becomes really the combination of so many different things and experiences, right? So I'll start from the very beginning and kind of work my way up quickly till today. So NYUMA Harrison is my name. I was born in Zambia, in the capital city, Lusaka. And I'm saying all this because I know you have such a big, wide, diverse platform. So I'm excited to introduce people to Lusaka and Zambia. So I was born in Lusaka, Zambia, to Alexander Harrison, my father, Dorothy Harrison, my mother, who coincidentally was a nurse at the very same hospital where I was born. And my dad was in the airline industry. So my dad worked for Zambia Airways, and he was in like management and leadership for the airlines. So I lived in Zambia till I was 6 years old, and moved to Kenya when I was 6. And
you lived in Kenya before.
I know, and I know you love East Africa as much as I do. I see you on social media playing around East Africa. I said, this girl's a girl after my own heart. But yeah, so I lived in Kenya. Kenya is really where I grew up, right? So I was in school there from 1st grade until the 9th grade. So really all of my schooling was in Kenya, two different schools in Kenya and in different parts of the country. But I just love East Africa. And the whole time I was in school there, that whole duration, my parents didn't live in Kenya with us. So I ended up going to boarding school in Kenya while my parents traveled and they moved around to other parts of Africa. But keeping me and my siblings in boarding school is how they allowed for us to have some stability. But while we were in school, we would take breaks and we would now move to, my parents had moved to Liberia, so very close. So this is my introduction to West Africa, was Liberia. So we lived in Monrovia. And unfortunately, because of the civil war that started, we kind of, our stay there was very short. So we left Liberia, we lived in the Gambia, spent a little time in Senegal, and then from there, we made our biggest move, and that's when they pulled us out of boarding. So moved to the United States as a family. And that's kind of where I've been. So I did college and everything else. I did undergrad and grad school here. I went to nursing for my undergrad. And then later on, many years later, I went and got a master's, an executive master's in leadership from the School of Business, still in the Washington, D.C. area. So that's really my life. It's been a lot of like movement, a lot of different things happening. By profession, I am a nurse. always have been a nurse, always will be a nurse. Like I said, my mother was a nurse. So this is
Yeah.
really what I've been in the nursing field for 22 years and done a lot of different things there. So
Wow. That's a
I
lot.
know, Ella, relax. She's like, well, I told you I was getting older. So 22 years in the emergency room, really doing emergency trauma, everything, but also mentoring, teaching, coaching, doing a lot of different things. Also worked on the academic side, with universities. And in this time too, what I've always done, no matter where I was, even from the time I was a little girl in Kenya, the one thing that has been consistent my whole life is service and serving people and interacting with communities. It's been my love, my passion. And I'm really grateful that my parents were the kind of people that just always let me have it and they encouraged it, right? No matter where I was. So when we were in Kenya, my sister and I think I was in like grade 5. Yeah, I was in grade 5, but we would go into like what people, there's different terms for it in different
Yeah.
countries, but in the shanty compounds, in the slums, in the, it's called different things, but the lower income settlement areas, we would go, and I was in the 5th grade, and we would go and teach classes, teach English to people who maybe needed that. And you can imagine me, grade 5 little self, and I was teaching high school students who were older than me. But that was one of my biggest moments, because it was the first time where I read, no matter how small you are, you can still give back, even to people bigger than you. But that service continued my whole life. So who am I? I'm a nurse, and now I do some stuff in nursing leadership, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But I'm also now the founder and executive director of the NYUMA HARRISON Foundation, which is really now the flagship of all my years of service coming into one umbrella. And this is, I think, why we're here today, to talk about the NYUMA HARRISON Foundation as a nonprofit organization doing work in Zambia, in Africa.
Wonderful, wonderful story. Short story about you. You've been to different parts in Africa. You are a full African. An African,
yes.
Except Nigeria. You haven't visited Nigeria.
No.
I'm going to bring you to Nigeria. You need to.
I'm not worried. I'm not worried, because all the Nigerians are all my friends, and people are always like, "Why do you know so many?" Because this Nigeria is calling me. So I think we need to make this happen. Okay.
Definitely.
Humanitarians of Africa Conference, Nigeria. Let's do it. Whatever you want.
How did you know what is cooking? How did you know what is cooking?
I know greatness when I see it. I know great thinkers when I see them.
Okay, so talking about your foundation, what exactly is your foundation about, and what has been the impact so far?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the NYUMA HARRISON Foundation, in summary, is a nonprofit organization. I live here in the United States, and so I work and I operate a lot out of here in the United States. So we're registered here as a nonprofit organization, but we are also registered and we operate mostly in Zambia right now. And I say right now because, again, our vision and our goal is to expand all over Africa. As you know, I'm not a one country girl when it comes to Africa. But what we do is, our goal is to help raise whole human beings, whole children, and help raise children in the most holistic way possible, so that they can have the best opportunities ever to grow up in Africa and to have exposure and experiences and everything that will allow them to be happy, thriving, productive, ready members of society. And so what we do is we target all of our services to serving the children that are most marginalized or most disadvantaged. And that can be children we've been working over the last 2 years primarily with orphans. Unfortunately, we have a very big population of orphaned children in Zambia. So working primarily with orphans, but we are also very concerned now and have on our radar working with children in rural areas that may not be orphaned, but are disadvantaged in that way. But even in the inner city, you will find that even children living in the capital city sometimes are just marginalized because they just don't have access to the same resources and everything as other children in the community. My vision and my goal, I like to think that I grew very lucky. I had a lot of experiences, exposure. I had great parents, everything else. My dream for the NYUMA HARRISON Foundation is to make sure that as many kids as possible get to experience that, what it's like to feel supported, what it's like to feel validated, what it's like to have ideas and exposures to who you can be, where you can be, and how far in this life that you can go. So that is really what our organization does.
Wonderful, wonderful. Having to help children that do not have access to what you have had. growing up is really an amazing thing. So would you say that that's what inspired the whole journey into the humanitarian nonprofit sector?
I would say yes, in many ways, right? I would say yes. I mean, you have a heart for giving, but then it's like, what informs that, and who do you want to give to, and why? But again, I think the older I've gotten, the more I understand how fortunate I am and how lucky I was to have so many of the experiences that I did, even by virtue of like moving around Africa and seeing different things, meeting people from different cultures, and just how that opens up your mind to possibilities, right? And it doesn't limit where in the world you can go, who you can be. Because if you say to me, oh, is it possible for a young girl from Africa to be a pilot? I can say yes, because I knew pilots growing up. Is it possible to be a doctor? Yes, I knew them. I saw them. I interacted with them, right? So it's really about like shaping a mindset, but it's really hard to shape a mindset when either you don't know that these things are possible, you've never seen anyone that looks like you doing these things, or because you know it's possible, but you're struggling with hunger, you're struggling with food, or you're struggling with maybe you're really smart and you're educated and you're driven, but then now you don't have the small amount of money it needs to pay the school fees for you to take the exam, right? So little small things can really become huge barriers or huge can have a huge impact in how you shape the rest of your life and what is possible no matter where you go. So for me, I'm like, I don't look at these things as big things, right? These are small little things that we can do that can really change a whole person's life. What we do as a foundation is we look at like, what are the key things that it takes to not just say, here's a child, they have school and they have a home, right? But we say, what else does it take to really raise a whole human being, to make a child feel validated? And so for us, those are healthcare, education, nutrition, social engagement. Who are the people in your society, quote unquote, and then skills development. Those are our big pillars, and those are the things that we're working on so far and trying to deliver to children everywhere.
Wonderful, wonderful. So what does it mean to run a nonprofit in Zambia? What is it like? I know you've been running away from this question, but I've heard stories about running a nonprofit in Kenya, in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Cameroon, but I've never heard anything about what it means to run a nonprofit in Zambia. So could you give us a little tiny detail about what exactly it looks like?
Okay, I'm going to speak, and I'm going to qualify this by saying that this is my very own experiences, right? The great thing about getting into the nonprofit space in Zambia is that there's no shortage of need, right? There's just like, think of the idea. What is it that you want to do? Do you want to do something around sexual health and reproductive rights for children? Sure, there's a huge need. There's a huge gap. Do you want to do something around career development, leadership coaching, all of these things? There's no shortage of needs, right? Everything and everybody's needed. And so fortunately, there are a lot of existing nonprofits in Zambia. And when we talk about nonprofits, there's two different layers the way I think about them. The local, on the ground ones that are started by individuals like myself, like you, and who are doing the work in the community on the ground level. And then you have the big international NGOs that come in and are working at a much different level, right? So for me, this was a challenge, right? How do I start a nonprofit in Zambia while living full-time in the United States? And how do I start this at the beginning of the pandemic, right? Fortunately, I was really lucky because right before things started to shut down, I was in Zambia and I'd taken a trip to Zambia and I was doing all the things that I like to do, just, engaging the community, giving back and everything. But I had my family members, like my younger cousins and my nieces with me. And then I met a few other people, very young, college age level people. And so the advantage was I had found already people who were interested in the same things, to people who were passionate about them. So when everything got locked down, I could remotely start designing frameworks and everything else. And now exporting that information or my ideas to Zambia and having people on the ground who can help us get registered, get set up, get everything else. The experience so far, really the foundation has grown, and everything we've been is because of not me, myself, and my vision, my leadership, but just having the people on the ground who are willing to do the work Yes, who are willing to do the work, but who are willing to trust somebody who isn't in the country, right? And to trust my vision, my leadership, my everything that I was trying to do, and who could work with me and give me on the ground information saying, you know what, this is not how this is done, or we know what, we need to go register with the government and get this done. But also having the advantage of me being here, my board, my advisory board being here, because we're outside of everything. So we can look now with different lenses and ideas and have people on the ground who are implementing. So on the ground, it's been exciting for me. It's been exciting, but it's also a lot of work. As you know, there's the time differences, but you also interact with cultural differences, work ethic differences, right? I come from a world where it's work, 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 work. In Zambia, things are very different, right? And for me, that's been a stretch, and that's been growing, just learning how to keep the humans in the humanitarian work and the human element, and understanding that my team, they have their own goals and their own needs, and especially during the pandemic, how am I pushing them to think about healthcare for orphans when they maybe themselves are sick, and having to think about how their own care and their own healthcare. So it's been a challenge. It's really stretched me as a leader, but it's stretched me in ways that I enjoy and in ways that I think are important. So it hasn't been easy, but it's been worth everything.
I know. So talking about stretches, what have been some of the challenges you have experienced running your organization? Now, you've mentioned one challenge, which is the time difference, location issues, but what other challenges do you face running your organization?
I think that my biggest challenge, quite honestly, has been I had a vision for the NYUMA HARRISON Foundation when we started. We were going to serve young children in Zambia, right? But my vision was also to create leadership opportunities for other young people, college students, young working professionals, right? And to put them in leadership positions, because one of the things that I recognize in our society many times in Africa is we like to recycle leaders, right? So when we have leadership positions open, we look for who has worked in this position for the last 10 years. We look for people who've worked at big organizations, and we'll give them another big opportunity, right? But I really want to democratize opportunities, not just for the children we're serving, but also for young people who need the experience, who need the opportunity. So here we go. Here's my great idea. Let's put young people in leadership positions, give them a chance to lead while they're in college, everything. So by the time they're graduating with experience, they're graduating with a CV that they've built for themselves. Surprise, surprise, and biggest challenge that you find then, right, when you're working with a youth-led volunteer group is that, one, how do you train leaders while developing and doing the work that building a new organization and delivering results with people who also have to learn how to do these things in real time, right? That's almost like two different things happening, right? Bringing resources to the community and the children while trying to train and develop leadership. Training for everybody takes time, but trying to do these things and scale and impact and all of these things while also taking the time. And then also because they're volunteers and they're college students and they're new working professionals, it's like, sorry, my exams just started. I'm not available for the next 2 months. But at the same time, you're doing a podcast or an interview like that, and they say, what's your impact, right? But your impact and everything has had to stop because people have different needs and different priorities, right? So it's like, do we go and do we hire people who have experience and everything again now? How do you budget that and start paying people at the level that while also trying to serve people at, as a new organization? So you can either take a lot of money and start paying it in salaries for people to do the work, or you can take that money to the ground. How do I spend money transporting and making sure that my all volunteer team, who are young people, they don't have income, they don't have their own cars. So even in one day of volunteer activity, how much am I spending transporting a whole team of people versus how much is really reaching the people on the ground? Everybody has needs here, right? So I think that is just, we're in a, how do you do work effectively and fairly and take care of everybody, from your staff to your end users? How do you take care of everybody's financial needs, time needs, everything, and do it in a way that is high quality? So I take leadership very personally. So I want to train my leaders, but I also can't take too much time doing that and not enough time building the organization, right? Or getting to know my kids. So it's again, it's stretching. It's stretching. It's stretching.
I can understand having to juggle both, and you want to build these people, but you also want to build something and make impact. So I can really relate to what that means. So talking about your children, I know you have told me something about them before, but could you throw a little light on the children you work with?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So over the last year and a half, we have been working with children. Just we actually decided to work with just one group of children at one orphanage, right? And this was a very intentional decision. We decided what we didn't want to do was just be spreading ourselves around the country or in different communities where we really didn't get to learn our children. We didn't get to know their names, know their birthdays, or learn their personality, so that if we show up this month, somebody's looking a little different, acting a little different, is something new, is something going on. You can't really form that kind of relationship with people and do what we're saying, raise whole human beings, if we're scattered. So we decided to really plant ourselves at one orphanage and really kind of make that our home. And this was really important too, because as a new organization, we needed the stability and we needed the consistency, and we needed a safe place in which to create systems and processes and models. So we were at one orphanage for the last year and a half, working with this group of 27 kids, maybe age ranges over the last year from like 6 to almost like 19, right? So very varied, boys and girls. And all of them in school, enrolled in school, all of them coming from various backgrounds, right? Some were found literally on the streets and fortunately brought into this home and adopted here. So they already had that structure and everything. Our job over the last year and a half has really been to validate who they are in a bigger way, right? So to look at, like, for example, who has medical problems. We knew one or two who had big, very obvious medical needs. The rest were fine, but we recognize sometimes fine just means that we haven't asked enough questions, or we haven't really examined them and we haven't really looked at them, right? But really doing that and then bringing in like a doctor to come in twice a week to examine them, to look in the ears, to look in the mouth. When someone has a rash on their skin, is it really just because they ate something, or is it really indicative of malnutrition or something else, right? Same thing with school. All of our kids are in school, but how are they really doing? Are they really reading? Are they progressing on plays? So really just doing that with our kids. Our kids are amazing. They're really, really the happiest kids on earth, despite everything and anything that they've been through. They are really joy givers, and our job has to really been to give them back that joy, but to also help raise them in that way. We actually only last week finished our time at this one orphanage. So now we're looking at moving on and finding a space in which we can move from just serving one small group of kids to finding a much larger space where we can, over the next year, even double the number of kids that we're going to serve. So as opposed to being in a home that is restricted and limited so nobody else can access the services, now we're moving into a chapter where we're going to be opening up, and the kids will be coming to us at almost like a youth center kind of model, where they will be coming to us, and that way we can open it up to a variety of children. We're not also limited, because as you know, working in one place, you can't bring in kids from a different orphanage here and everything else. So we're excited about the next chapter. We have had a year and a half to really figure out what we're doing. This is going to be another chapter of growth and stretch, but I think we're ready for it. So that's where we're going now, and serving kids in different ways. But we know our structure, we know our pillars, we know what we're doing, we know how to approach partners, and now it's just time to expand and make ourselves accessible to more, still with a core group of kids. So it won't be a revolving door of children, but it will just be and a larger number of kids.
Wonderful. I love the fact that you have clarity in what you're doing for the kids and expanding so that it can reach other people, not just limiting it to the number you already have. That's a very, very great work that you're doing. So talking about the next phase, where do you see your nonprofit in, let's say, 5 years? What goals do you have? What are those big dreams you have for your foundation?
Okay, this is fantastic. We were actually just talking about this. So I will say, last year and a half, we've been serving 27 kids. By this time next year, we'd like to at least double that number to almost 50, right? So we want to go from almost 30 to about 50 kids, right?
Yeah.
That we're serving, and we're serving deeply, we're serving holistically. We will continue to do the same things around healthcare, education, nutrition, social services, and skills development with those kids, but increase the number. Another thing that we would like to do over the next year is acquire our own facility, right?
Yeah.
Where we can house and put things in that facility, and it will be a building that will allow us to really structure a good classroom, a good like play spaces, good
Yeah.
clinic. Again, we already had a clinic at the orphanage, but this is more open, but also one in which when if we're not using the space and the kids are gone to school during the day where they should be, during the daytime, this can remain and be used as meeting spaces for people in the community and allow us to start generating income of our own. So really also in the next year, starting to create new revenue streams for the foundation so that we're not 100% grant supported, donor supported, and always kind of waiting for other people to assist us, but allow us to now be in a space. Even with the kids coming in, can we buy a bus that we can use to pick up the kids when they come into a program, but during the daytime, how can we use that same transportation as a means of transportation that creates revenue? In 5 years, I would really like to see us in 5 other African countries, right? So whether it's a small program that starts off again at an orphanage or at a school in Kenya, and maybe one in Nigeria or one something else, I think that in 5 years we should at least be, no, not I think, my hope is that we should have a model that we have tested and been working on in Zambia that we can say, adapt this, try this in different countries now, right? Because that's really the goal for us. And then hopefully in 10 years, we can be in every single part of Africa now, scaling and growing with youth centers and have our own revenue streams. We can have the kids that have come through our program working for us in leadership. The ones who have started with us have been with us since we started. I would like to see them working for big international NGOs or doing whatever their dreams were because they got this start, right? So really that's the vision, is just to keep scaling, to keep working to sustainability and independence and everything else. That's really the goal. And for me to actually even be relevant, I would like to see the NYUMA Harrison Foundation become NHF Africa, right? So it's not me, I'm not the face of it, I'm not even the name of it. This is now just the African story, it's not the NYUMA Harrison Foundation story.
Wonderful. I'm smiling because it's so amazing to see that you thought this far and you're even thinking about the sustainability part of it and thinking like you run a business, because this is what every nonprofit leader, I tell them, I said, look, you need to think like you run a business. That's the only way you can begin to think of sustainability plans, funding plans, options that you can generate revenue and you're not having to depend on funds or donors externally. And it's really great to see that you're already thinking about that from now. It's amazing. Well done.
Yeah.
Well done so far. So I have just a few more questions for you. I think 2 more questions before I would let you go, because I know we're in 2 different time zones and you have a lot to do. So yeah, this meeting is going to end in like 7 minutes. So do you mind me ending it so that you can rejoin with the same link?
No problem.
Yeah, it's a recording meeting so that it doesn't cut
us off.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
So what are your successes, your greatest successes, achievements? I want you this time to blow your trumpet, because it's not easy to, it's not easy to make some of these advancements, especially in the nonprofit sector. So what are those things that you regard as successes and breakthroughs for you in your organization?
Really, I think that for us, our greatest successes, well, I'll speak for myself personally first. I think it's to have had a dream, and just to have had a dream that started off with like, let's find a way to deliver healthcare services to kids in Africa. Let's start in Zambia, and then to have actually started, right? And to have started at a time that was not convenient for anything and everyone in the world, travel, communication, stress, illness, death. It was the beginning of the pandemic. Everything was stopping while we were starting. So I think that just doing that is huge. And I want that to be a takeaway to people, right? That even when everything seems against you and is working against you, just kind of get started, put one foot in front of the other, because once you start to get momentum, you will realize that that it was actually possible, right? What seems impossible is actually possible. Just get started. When I started, I had a team of 5 people. We were counting yesterday, and there were 5 volunteers in Zambia. We were counting yesterday, and I think we're almost up to 20 volunteers, consistent full-time volunteers in the last year, right? So to increase that number, but I say that because, and that may not even sound like a lot, but that is a lot considering we actually turn down volunteers, and we turn down volunteers because we want to maintain quality in everything we do. I know each and every one of my volunteers. I know them by name. They know when they text me, they call me, I answer, I respond. It's important for me that the people going out and representing my organization, interacting with my kids, are people I have personally vetted, that I know your interests, I know your heart, I know how this thing is aligned, but I also know that what you like to do, what you're about, so I can invest in you, make sure this is a win-win for you too as a volunteer. So that kind of growth is huge. Establishing our board has been a huge accomplishment as well, and establishing a board in the United States where the only person on that entire board who's been to Zambia is me. But to have people who are who are dedicated, who know Zambia, they're not even from Zambia, right? But they're invested, they're committed to this work, right? That in itself, and getting that kind of global buy-in and investment is huge, right? Because usually it's like, why should somebody from Germany care about what's happening in Nigeria, even if they've never stepped there, right? But really, again, knowing that that's possible, but that requires leadership, that requires pitching, that requires people really trusting your value. Other things that I'm proud of is everything that we've had to do just legally as an organization, opening up bank accounts as an NGO, getting all the registrations, the licenses, the permissions, the everything. As you know, whether it's here in the United States or in Zambia, that is usually a lot of work to try to say that you've done everything and you put everything in place. Why is that important? Because establishing credibility in the nonprofit sector, especially when you're doing work in Africa and you're trying to show legitimacy, accountability, trust, systems, processes, operations, all of that stuff, that has been huge for us. And it's the thing I am the most proudest of, right? But also within my team, with my volunteers, slowing down the culture in a world where a lot of the young people, it's instant, right? You do something, go post it on Instagram. Everything we do is like instant now, right? Instant gratification, but really slowing the culture down internally and saying, guys, let's think through this. Before we post a picture, is this the right picture to post? Does this show everyone well, right? How are we growing? How are we doing? Because it's very easy to feel like you're getting behind in society right now, but really creating that culture and value. But more importantly, when I first developed the website, I had pictures on there, stock images of what we wanted to do. But to really know that I can look at the website now and I can say we can replace everything there with a real picture. We have brought doctors to our kids. We have brought teachers to our kids. We have brought volunteers to our kids. We have brought nutrition and food to our kids. So to just see yourself going from goals to actualize things, and to have the data and the evidence to back it up, and to be in a position now we can actually keep growing, amazing. So now I'm just like, what else can we do, right? Let's think bigger, because clearly these things are possible. So truly excited about those things.
I'm so excited for you too. The sky is definitely your starting point.
Why not? The sky is your starting point. We have to quote you, Ella. The sky is your starting point. When we establish our new building, and once we get painting, we're going to put that on the wall, right? The sky is your starting point, Ella.
Definitely. Okay, so before I finally let you go, are there any specific projects or programs you would need the support of the general public on?
Yeah. Great question. And great timing for it. We have coming up, like I told you, we just concluded our service and our work at the place we've called home for the last year and a half. So right now we're in a place of like restructuring and getting ready to relaunch into the next chapter for us, right? And like I said, We have a fundraiser coming up September 17th. That's going to be here in the DC area where I live. And a lot of that and everything else that we're doing from this point forth is really trying to get buy-in from how do we now go from working at a small place to a big place? How do we fund and find our own space and fund it in a way where we can even have job security for the people who are working there? I don't like bringing in people on staff and they don't know if we're going to be able to pay them the next month, right? So building the kind of funding and structure that gives security to those people. If we have land and space, how can we now really thinking about the business end of the nonprofit, but putting it in the space where now we need all hands on deck to help us grow these ideas. Think structurally, think accountability, think funding, think staff development, leadership development, think about community engagement. So we're looking to buy over the next couple months, and I'll say it would be great if we can have these things done by Christmas, but our own bus and to establish our own space, redesign it, repaint it, have structured partnerships that allow us to do this so that by January, I like to be ambitious with my goals. We can open the doors and start welcoming in the next group of NHF kids and start and be ready to serve them. We have the team, we have the staff, but now we need to scale numbers of people, but also scale on funding. So anyone who is interested in supporting us and helping us ideas, you and I have talked about even marketing and branding and why that's important in building credibility. But anything else, whether it's technology and revamping our website, if you have skills, if you have ideas, if you're a nurse, a doctor, and have ideas for like remote kind of working, we can do services, even mental health sessions. Any idea and every idea is welcome at the NYUMA Harrison Foundation. We find a place for you, okay? So funding and also skills and contributions just from the global community with their ideas. And certainly partnerships on the corporate end, because that will give us the time and the cushion up until we can get self-sustaining mechanisms for revenue.
Wonderful, wonderful. So guys, you have heard it. These are the ways you can support NHF. And I want you, as usual, show some love. Go to Instagram, go to the website. You can see the links are going to be on your screen and also in the description box. So if you want to visit the website, go to their Instagram page to see what they're doing. Please feel free to go there. If you want to volunteer, you want to support, partner anonymously. There are a lot of people who like to do it anonymously.
Absolutely.
Please feel free to do that with the information that you have available to you. So there's email, contact, website, everything. You have no excuse at all. Also, please share this video so that anyone who you never know, someone within your network would find what NHF is doing very interesting and want to support. So you can be the key to that next partnership for NHF. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here and having this amazing conversation with me. It's great to have you share with us how things are done differently from another dimension, from another region. Thank you so much. I had an amazing conversation.
Thank you, Ella. In Zambia, well, in one of our languages in Zambia, we say, well, let me say, in Nyanja, which is the language is spoken a lot in the capital, we say zikomo. That's how we say thank you. In Kenya, we'll say asante, right?
I learned.
You know, you learned to say, I love it. I love it. Yeah, I love it. We're all from East Africa together. Yes. But no, sincerely, Zikomo, from the bottom of my heart, from the whole team in Zambia. And I just want to celebrate you and honor you for the work that you're doing and raising voices, telling stories. I think it's time that we start making the nonprofit and humanitarian work that is being done in Africa something attractive, something interesting, something credible. So you are really, really leading the way in that space, and you bring your professionalism, your network, everything to it. So what you're doing is so important. I just wanted to take a moment to honor you, to celebrate you, to tell you you're needed. We look forward to bringing you to Zambia. We look forward to hosting you.
I will definitely visit Zambia sometime.
Absolutely. Well, the NHF family, anyone that interacts with us is by default an NHF family member at this point. So welcome to the NHF family. Welcome to Zambia in advance. We look forward to having you.
Thank you so much. Asante.
Hey.
Zikomo, yeah.
Zikomo, you said it right. Zikomo Kwambili. Yes, thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on today's session. Do not forget, watch the other episodes, share, drop a comment, like, tell me what you love from today's episode, and I will see you in the next episode.
Okay, bye.